And here's the number one thing that keeps you alive as a pilot. Let go! Boom! As a pilot, there's a variety of different things that you must know and also must execute in the aircraft. However, the one thing that really keeps you alive and flying safely for many, many years as a pilot is having personal minimums. This is something that's not talked about that much, but it is very critical for you flying safely for many years to come. And no one's going to be standing over your shoulder forcing you to make personal minimums for yourself, and they definitely not going to be standing over your shoulder making you adhere to your own personal minimums. But it's very critical that you do so. Having personal minimums in aviation is a lot like having standards, personal standards in life. It's very difficult for you to be happy in life if you don't have standards and a code that you live by. Everybody needs a code and a certain set of standards that you live by. And just like you need that for your life, everybody in aviation and every pilot needs a set of personal minimums. In this video, we're going to get into how to just set up some basic personal minimums for yourself, and then how you can adhere to them and be disciplined enough not to be moved off your center and stick to your personal minimums. Let's get into that thing. Let's go! Boom! You can set personal minimums and standards for pretty much anything in aviation. But 3 areas that I encourage you to set a personal minimum for. One being the wins. Make sure that you have a personal minimum for yourself of wins that you decide to yourself you do not want to fly in winds that exceed X amount of knots. And don't just think about the wind itself, but also factor in what the crosswinds are doing. If there's a gust of wind, these is very critical kind of measurements that you can use, and you want to make sure you adhere to them. So put them kind of almost in stone, and it's set there and it's fixed. And if you ever look at a METAR or a TAF and those winds exceed the number that you have as your personal minimums, then you just decide that you're not going to fly that day. Flying is always going to be there. You wake up the next day, the sky is still there, the plane is still there, and it's another opportunity to fly. However, if you defy those personal minimums that you set and put yourself at risk, then really bad things could potentially happen for you. There's a way that you want to stretch and grow your development, but you want to make sure you try to do it safely. And it's the times where you can lower those personal minimums, and there's times, of course, where you can raise those personal minimums. You should always be aware of that, and we're going to talk about that later in this video as well. But let's start with the personal minimums of the winds. Whenever you look at the forecast and you set a personal minimum for yourself that you don't want to fly in winds that exceed X, and adhere to that at all times. Let go! Boom! The second must-have personal minimum is centered around visibility. You've looked at your METAR and you've seen, of course, the viz may be 10 statute miles, 8 statute miles, 7 statute miles. Whatever your personal minimum is, you need to set that and adhere to that. And if that METAR says something that it exceeds that, it's less than what you feel comfortable with, do not fly. This is very critical and something that you want to keep in mind, that it's not about what's legal, it's always about what keeps you safe. That's the biggest theme around personal minimums. It's not about what's legal, it's about what keeps you safe. For example, you may be clear and you may be good and it may be legal for you to fly in 3 statute miles of visibility, 152. That may be legal standards for whatever conditions you're getting ready to go up and fly in right now with the cloud layer and the visibility. But that is very low viz, and it may be a situation where you've never flown in the 3 mile viz. Maybe you've only flown in 6 miles or better, or 8 miles or better, or 10 miles or better. So you always want to make sure that you're adhering to whatever your personal minimums are at that time, and you're not just dropping it down to what's legal. Don't just graze over the bar just because you can, because it's legally safe. Do something because it meets your personal minimum and personal standard that you have for yourself as a pilot. So always be thinking about that. You thought about that with the winds? Do the same exact thing when you think about visibility. And then that last and final one that you want to have on the must-have list is right here. Hey, the last must-have on your personal minimum list, of course, centers around clouds. As you can see, the winds, the viz, and the clouds. All about the conditions. What are your personal minimums as they relate to that? When you start thinking about clouds, you may say to yourself, you don't want to fly in clouds if they are less than X amount of feet. And you adhere to that and stick to whatever your personal minimums are. Again, don't think about what's legal. Think about what you're personally comfortable with as your minimum. Look back at your logbook. This is where you can utilize some of your logbook information and think about some of the conditions that you've flown in and say, oh, you've never flown in conditions that were of this nature, even though you legally can. So what is your personal minimums? How are you setting them, and how are you here touring them? Boom! So now that you have your personal minimum set, let's talk about when you can and when it's appropriate to lower those personal minimums and to raise those personal minimums. Let's talk about when you should raise them, first of all. So if you've already set them for yourself personally, when is a great opportunity that you should even increase that bar and raise those personal minimums up even more? When you're flying with passengers, particularly when you're flying with your loved ones, your non-flying type of family and friends. You should always try to raise those personal minimums. You may have certain standards for yourself, but you are very aware when you have passengers in the aircraft, for example, you're going to have a completely different weight and balance, all kinds of things. So obviously, if you have your winds set at a personal minimum for a certain level for you, that's fine when you're flying and you're dipping and swinging and banging that thing solo. But now that, of course, you're weighted down in the aircraft with family and friends, you may want to even take those winds and lower them even more, because you don't want to put the aircraft at risk when you have that kind of weight and balance on it. Those are the kinds of things, not just the weight and balance, but also the fact that you're flying with your loved ones and your family, and you want to make sure that you're being even extra cautious with them. This is very critical to your safety as well. And you can follow the same methodology for everything, for the clouds and for the visibility. So you basically have two sets of personal minimums. This is what you do, and this is what your personal minimums are when you're flying solo. And then you raise that bar and you increase those personal minimums when you're flying with passengers. So those are the instances where you can raise your personal minimums from where they currently are. And then where can you lower them? Let's just say you're flying with a more experienced pilot. Let's just say you're flying. That is a perfect opportunity for you to lower your personal minimums and then give you an opportunity to grow. This is how you grow safely in aviation. If you just stay locked in on your personal minimums, but you never decide to stretch and grow yourself, you're just going to stay at that one area and you're never really going to grow as a pilot. You don't want to do that. You always want to be growing and development. So you always want to do it safely. And the best way to do it safely is, you're flying with a more experienced pilot or a pilot that has flown in certain type of conditions. Now is a great opportunity for you to lower your personal minimums. So that's an opportunity for you to lower them. And then when you're flying with non-flying family and friends, that's an opportunity for you to raise those personal minimums to make sure you're keeping everyone safe. So let's talk about some of the challenges that can come with having personal minimums and sticking to them as you go throughout your aviation journey. It's real easy for you to just think about to yourself right now, what are my personal minimums? Where do I want to set them at? Where do I feel safe and comfortable? That's real cool. And it's probably even easy for you to kind of like stick to them if you're just flying for fun and you're flying solo. Like if you were to wake up tomorrow and go on a flight and you were to check the weather beforehand and it doesn't meet your personal minimums, it's real easy for you to just back off, cancel that flight, wait to fly another day. It's a beautiful thing. But when other people start coming into the fold and you start having these external pressures from all different areas, that's when it can be very difficult for you to not adhere to your personal minimums. But that's when you're being challenged the most. That's when you really need to stick to them. So you always want to make sure that, you got to go to this really big business meeting, or you told a family or a friend that you were going to fly them to X. But again, you woke up and the METAR just did not meet your personal minimums. You need to cancel the flight. Boom! Never fall victim to peer pressure or any type of external pressures that get you in a compromising situation with your personal minimums. They're your personal minimums for a reason. You set them because that's what you feel comfortable with. So make sure you adhere to them. And you're doing it not only for your own safety, but for your safety of your passengers as well. So your passengers may be pestering you like, I thought we were going to go up. I thought we were supposed to go last week and the week before that and the week before that. And if you let that get to you, not only are you putting yourself at risk, you're putting them at risk. They may not even realize that, but you're putting them at risk as well. So don't let people pester you or pressure you into doing something and not sticking to your own personal minimums. No one's going to be looking over your shoulder, making you set personal minimums. And they're definitely not going to be making you stick to them. This is going to be your own personal responsibilities. And you have to have a high EQ, emotional intelligence, to not fall victim to peer pressure or external pressures that have you break your personal standards and your personal minimums. Let go. Boom! Having personal minimums is the one thing that can keep you and anybody who flies with you alive. Don't forget to like this video, comment on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. I am Donovan Batiste, and this is Leadership Mindset, a place where you can come for free and fun videos about everything that you need to know for you to become a pilot. Because I want you to feel what pilots all over the world feel when we safely swinging and banging that thing. Let go!